Hello, all. It is February the 5th of 2020, and it is time for Weekly Manga Recap with your hosts, Nick and Chris. Chris, what's up, man?
I'm Chris. I'm doing good, Nick. How
That
about
is
you?
what's up. I don't know. I've been sleeping weird all week, so I'm not at my best. I'm sure that this podcast will be good for me, though. So
True. Is it because of post Super Bowl blues?
no, I don't really care that much about the NFL anymore. It's just I don't know. My life's been kind of like plateaued right now, but I'm trying to work my way out of it. So
That's good.
And I got people who have got my back. I know that much, so I'll be good. So
Yeah, not me. Delete my number out of your phone, please. I don't need other people's problems being dumped on me.
Yeah, because that's something I always do. Chris, I got a hangnail.
I'm like, Nick, I can't keep solving these problems for you.
As you fly into Florida with a pair of nail clippers, I've got you, buddy.
But I come with like giant hedge clippers. Like I've gone through all the effort to get down here, and I'm just like, all right, now hold your fingers steady. We don't want another repeat of me trying to get your wisdom teeth out.
Why do you use the same tool to get my wisdom teeth out as to get a hangnail?
I have one tool. I'm using it for everything. After this, I'm gonna rotate your tires with this.
Now stick your finger in the flamethrower muzzle.
God damn it.
All right. Chris, we have a lot of manga to talk about this week.
Do we?
Do
we? It's, I mean, I feel like if Chrome had the ability to tell me, like, you have too many tabs open, it would right now. I'd be like, stop, what are you doing?
I think I've got about 16 open on this window, something like that. So I literally haven't even made a list or counted. I've just got everything open. So I think we're just going to have to get this ball rolling because there was something unexpected that happened this week, along with the regular series. I thought I muted that. God damn it.
Yep.
Along with the regular...
Gomon returned for a cameo in Eden Zero. The goat torture looking dude. He was in a cameo.
I mean, he might have been. There was enough weird stuff that happened in Eden Zero this week that if he had showed up and I forgot about it, then I would believe you.
He does in a cameo, I guess. He's in the... Now we'll talk about it when we get to it.
Oh, he shows up in the... Okay, right.
Yeah.
All right. So, but before we get into that, we're going to talk about the special one-shot that came out on Viz. I guess I'm not sure if this was in Shonen Jump proper or what. But anyway... There was a Death Note one-shot. It's by Oba Nobata, the team behind the original series, and behind Bakuman. And it's a kind of sequel to Death Note. I mean, it takes place after the main series, and it takes place like in modern times when that series ended about 15-ish years ago. But it's a very short story overall.
The story also essentially serves to kind of... not dunk on the original, but to basically be like, the original couldn't happen now.
Yeah, pretty much.
But here's something we could do. We'll dunk on the president.
It's a weird one shot. I will say I thought it was very good. I enjoyed it, and it did something different. So let's talk a little bit about it. This takes place in essentially modern day. Takes place in 2019 instead of 2020. Not sure exactly why. But Ryuk shows up again. He wants some fucking apples. And so he goes back to the human world. And apparently after a few years of searching for someone who can use the Death Note so that he can use them to get apples, he ends up approaching this boy named Minoru Tanaka. And we first see him approach Tanaka in 2019, and tap him with the Death Note, which causes Tanaka to remember the first time they actually met 2 years previously. And then we flash back to that. And we basically get some establishment that Tanaka is very different from Light from the get-go, because although he is incredibly intelligent, he does not apply himself very much. Like he gets these incredibly impressive IQ test scores, which Ryuk overhears the faculty talking about and goes to him thinking like, "Oh, this guy's really smart, so he'll be the best guy to use the Death Note." And Tanaka's in the playground alone by himself, looking at his test score, and he got like a 28 on his latest test. He's like, "I'm so stupid," and Ryuk's like, "Hi, I'm Ryuk, and I hear you're really smart because you got these top scores on this test." And Naka's like, "Oh, I guess that's like intelligence scores or something." Yeah, all right, well, that's different, but okay, whatever. I don't care. And Ryuk tells him the whole shindig about Light and what happened. There is some interesting stuff in this conversation about how Tanaka is familiar with the story of Kira because of they talk about him in like their ethics classes and stuff. And I like how Ryuk's like, "Oh, okay. Yeah, so I bet they treat him like one of the greats, huh?" And Tanaka's like, "No, they taught us about how he was a mass murdering terrorist." So, yeah, he sounds pretty accurate. But he also brings up that there are still people who worship Kira like a god. And it is interesting to see that effect that Light had on people because, very few people knew the truth about who he actually was. So he's had this tremendous influence on the world. But Ryuk tells him how, the Death Note works, with some amusing bits about how, like, unlike Light, Tanaka doesn't know how to speak English. So Ryuk's got to be like, "Okay, fine, I'll fucking write the fucking translation in for you, fucking pleb." And Tanaka spends some time thinking about it, and he brings up, like you mentioned before, how the stuff that Light did could not happen today. There's too much surveillance everywhere. The internet works differently. There's no way that you can, send untraceable messages and stuff like that. It'll get tracked down one way or another. So he thinks about what he could do with this notebook because he's like, well, I could give someone else the notebook. I could return it to Ryuk and I'll just, lose ownership of the book and I'll forget about it. But if I were to give it back to Ryuk, would he just give it to someone else? I mean, what should I do with this? So he spends some time thinking about it. And apparently he just spends like hours just silently thinking to himself. And eventually he's like, "Okay, I've got a couple of questions to ask you. Are there other humans besides me who can see you?" And Ryuk's like, "Yes, there are people who are alive from the first series still."
I like that fucking Mogi's in there, and you're like, "Oh yeah, I guess you were a character. Good for you to show up again."
He's like the one person who shows up in this little frame that doesn't show up in the actual story.
Like, oh, he runs a Denny's now. He left.
He's done with this shit.
He was very tired of this nonsense.
The one Denny's in Japan or whatever.
It's not popular, but they do make a very interesting variation on eggs over my hammy.
The other story he asks is, how far can the person possessed by the Shinigami be from their Shinigami? How far can he be from Ryuk while he's in possession of the notebook, basically? And Ryuk's like, well, I guess we never actually established that in the series itself. So let's say that you can be, I don't know, 14 kilometers from here. From me, rather. And so he's like, all right, fine. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to return the Death Note to you, but if you come back in 2 years, I will use the notebook, and I promise you apples every day. And so Ryuk's like, you mean I've just got to like put up with not having apples for 2 years? He's like, well, if you don't want to wait that long, then give it to someone else. But, that's my offer. And Ryuk's like, okay. And then we catch up to the modern day. And Ryuk's like, okay, here we go. What's the plan now? And he's like, all right. I'm going to sell the Death Note. And Ryuk is shocked by this idea. But he says, I'm going to put this up for auction online. And but Ryuk's like, but you said that it would just be tracked. And he's like, well, no, it's going to be different. So listen, you said I could be 14 kilometers away from you. Sakura TV is 11 kilometers from here. So you're going to go there and then use Japanese and write this message up and hold it in front of the camera. And so he goes and does this. And basically, you know, there's just this floating notepad that shows up in front of the news anchor's desk saying, hi, so the Power of Kira is up for sale. If you want to buy it, use the hashtag Power of Kira on Twitter. And oh god, people have probably been using that on Twitter, haven't they?
I'm actually checking it out right now. The first one is immediately a tweet from Donald Trump.
Of course. So we get to see a bunch of people reacting to this. We see, oh gosh, what are their names? It's Chris, you know these characters. Who are they?
Sorry. It's Matsuda and
mustache guy.
Well, I don't think this is the guy with the Well, he has a mustache now, but I think this was God, it was like Aozawa maybe.
Aizawa.
God, what the fuck was his name? He was the guy I think that used to have like the fro, wasn't it?
I think it is.
Death Note cops. All right,
Pretty
keep going.
much.
I'm gonna find out who it was again.
So immediately, you know, there are people who think it's a joke, but there are also people who are just bidding tons and tons of money. Like the next day, it's into the millions of dollars. People are like, "Oh, fuck!"
Yeah,
you
okay,
know,
that's Aizawa.
All right. Then we cut over to where Nier is, and Nier is like, "Fuck scissors! I'm growing this hair out, and it's not going to look anything resembling orderly." And Nier is building this replica of Ryuk's face. And he's like, yeah, I'm trying to create a facial recognition system for Shinigami. It'd be really difficult to use this because there's only like 3 people besides me in the world who can actually see the Shinigami. But, you know, maybe this could actually help us out in finding this new Kira, whom he was referring to as a Kira. For, you know, auction Kira. And Nier indicates, oh yeah, like I could actually see, you know, the Shinigami holding the notebook up. So this is legit. I know that this is real and there's a new Kira out there. So we're going to try and follow the Shinigami to this new Kira. What we're going to, you know, try and look for is security footage of the two of them together, especially if the notebook is going to be handed off to someone. His assistants are like, okay, you know, we're gonna have to catch this guy, you know, and so I'll arrange a ticket to Japan. And Nier's like, well, I mean, we can't really charge him with the crime, though. I mean, yes, the notebook is a horrible murder weapon, but just because you have it, that's not a crime. If he hasn't actually killed someone with it, then we can't really charge him with anything. If you want to seize the notebook, sure, but I mean, you know. There's no actual crime that's been committed yet, which is an interesting way of looking at it. I mean, it's correct. He hasn't actually killed anyone with it. So he says, all right, we're going to try and get in touch with, you know, Aizawa's team too and try and work with them over this. They conclude pretty quickly that Ryuk is traveling underground in order to travel from place to place, so they can't track him at all, even if they were to have people who could see him look through security camera footage. So Nier's like, all right, no point in me making this facial recognition thing then. And he hits a button and blows up the replica that he was working on, which seems unnecessary.
It was very unnecessary. Why was it even in the series to begin with? I guess as a way to show other people who hadn't seen Ryuk what he looks like, but then at the same time, they still can't see him, so...
I don't know. Nier brings up that also if the person gives up possession of the notebook by selling it, then they're going to forget about ever having had it. So as soon as they do it, basically there's no way of catching them. So they're going to have to basically intercept the moment of the notebook being passed off in exchange for the money. So our new Kira has sent another message saying, okay, the auction is going to end in a week. It might end even prior to that. Matsuda, like a fucking idiot, is like, hey, guys, no, don't broadcast this message. So everyone's like, oh, I guess it's legit then if the police are trying to stop this.
I like how it's just Matsuda, too. He's just the one fucking, like, what, 15 years later, he's still a fucking idiot.
I mean, when you think about it, so it would have been 2004 when he was already a cop. 2003 or 4, because that took place like in the modern times, I believe. The original Death Note, it started off at the same time as
and then there's
when
like
it was actually
5-year time skip.
Right, when Kira gets caught.
So,
but
it's about 10 years later or something like that.
Matsuda's got to be pushing 40 at this point. So
dude's got a baby face. I'll give it that.
Anyway, so they put Matsuda on desk duty for being an idiot, and the amounts keep on pumping up. It's to the point where countries and governments are bidding on this. It's up to $200 billion, and now the message changes to don't bother using Twitter anymore. Have the government representatives go into the media to make official announcements. So, hey, look, it's Donald Trump, and he plays a major role in this story.
Is he ever officially named as Donald Trump? I know,
just
obviously,
the president of the United States. He's just the president of the United States.
Okay.
So Donald Trump's like, United States will buy the power of Kira for $500 billion, which Mexico will pay for. They essentially get into a bidding war with the Republic of China. And they're also starting to make offers like, so the Chinese leader says, we will buy it for $1 trillion and we will promise to only use it for peaceful ends. And Donald Trump's like, we'll buy it for $2 trillion and never use it. So the new message just shows up, just say what you're gonna pay for it. I don't fucking care about what.
That is like the best. It's like, I don't care. I don't stop with the bullshit.
So there is an interesting thing that happens when the Japanese prime minister gets interviewed about this, where they're like, would it be possible to hold a summit of world leaders to ensure that no country buys it? And the prime minister is just like, some government's going to buy it. Whatever country says don't buy it is then going to be the first to turn around and try to do it after everyone believes them. It's like, yeah. The bid gets up to 1 quadrillion yen, which is $10 trillion. And people are, talking about this just like, geez, that could, pay off the entire national debt of Japan. And it's time to finally end the auction. Minoru says to Ryuk, okay, once I've confirmed the money is in, I will discard ownership of the notebook and you need to deliver it to the buyer. And Ryuk's like, well, all right, I was hoping to get more apples, but I'm curious about how this is going to go. So we go over to Nier again, and one of his assistants is asking, how do you expect the new Kira to actually get that amount of money? I mean, like, it would have to be an online transaction to get that amount of money. So how are they going to possibly do this without leaving a trail? So Nier is thinking about this while building a weird tower of blocks and model eyeballs, I guess.
That's what he does.
So, but Nier's like, this is a very, carefully planned way of doing things. They've made sure that there's no way of tracking to them selling the books. So the plan for them to receive the money must also be as carefully thought out. So what are they going to do? But before we find that out, this bizarre looking Shinigami who looks like an Aztec kind of inspired thing approaches Ryuk, saying, I guess calling him Armonia Justin, which is a weird, I don't know. Is he calling Ryuk that?
I think Ryuk's calling him that.
Oh, Ryuk is referring to him as Armonia. Okay. The word bubble is weird looking. All right. But so Armonia Justin, I guess, uh, says that the Shinigami King has called Ryuk and he must go back as soon as he is able to leave Minoru's side. And Ryuk's like, why? He goes, don't ask me. And then
he's the greatest character. He's the best character in Jump this week. He's my MVP already because he's this giant skeleton dude. He's a giant skeleton dude made of jewels who is on this chair. And the chair just slides into the scene. And he's like, hey, Ryuk, the Shinigami King's asking for you. Like, all right, why? He's like, don't ask me. And then he just slides into the scene.
I believe his chair has like spider legs, but that does not make the scene of him
because he doesn't move. He's independent from the chair, but he's like, I'm comfy. I'm staying like this way for life.
Yes. So, Minoru sends Ryuk to deliver one last announcement saying that the United States has bought the power of Kira for million trillion, a lot of money.
I think it's 10 trillion.
Okay, 1,000 million billion $10 trillion. Yes, so the quadrillion yen point that was mentioned before. So that's it. The Americans have bought the Death Note, and so they're like, all right. So what are we gonna do now? And Nier says, well, if you're gonna go seize the notebook, go do it. I live in America. So I'm not gonna do anything about this.
But you know,
I got mine.
Not to like jump ahead, but my favorite part of this entire one shot is that it just shows how fucking lame and useless Nier is. That he's just there to like have this long thing about, hey Kira, you're a formidable foe. I shall do everything in my power to try to outwit. He doesn't even seem to indicate he wants to outwit him. He's just kind of commenting on him. He's just like a play-by-play commentator who at the very end is like,
"You're so smart, Minoru.
Touche, you've one-upped me." I'm like, what do you do?
It's like, imagine like, you've got that scene where, we are playing chess, the true thinking man's game. I see you have taken my pawn, but I shall pay you back for that soon. You have taken my rook, but I am on my way to making my comeback. There goes my queen. Well,
he's like, well, you've gotten me
quite the 3/4 of the pieces on the board, but I shall be ready for you. And you have me in checkmate. Well played. I did not capture a single one of your pieces. A good game.
You truly are a worthy adversary. He's like, not from my end. You suck.
Even though you have not bested me this day, you have earned my respect. I mean, I beat you in 10 moves.
He's like, dude, you lost a fool's checkmate.
I somehow captured all of your pieces in 10 moves, even though there are more than 10 pieces in chess. But yeah, Nier tells them like, anyway, the more pressing issue is, how Akira is going to actually handle the transaction here. So this is, the chance for us to grab him if we really wanted to. So 24 hours after this announcement is made, there's another announcement made. And so like, so probably what's going to be is that, so Nier basically says 24 hours from now is 6 p.m. on Friday. So that is when the banks will close basically for the weekend. So that's why they chose that time for the next announcement. If they want the money deposited in a Japanese bank, though, that's asking to be caught essentially. And, Nier's like, yes, the lifetime earning potential of the average Japanese person is merely 300 million at best. If Akira has been playing this stuff from the start, they're actually phenomenally smart. So the next day, announcement is made saying the money from the winning bid should be deposited by May 27th of this year in equal amounts to every person with a Yotsuba Bank of Japan savings account, registered residents in Tokyo, age 60 and under as of May 24th, 2019. So the way that Minoru is avoiding being caught is by evenly distributing all of the money to approximately 1 million people, so that there's no way of actually tracking it to him. And, the announcement is made. Minoru's just like hanging out in his room. His mother approaches him saying like, "You've got a savings account with the Yotsuba Bank, don't you?" "Oh, yeah." "Oh my God, you're rich now." So there's all these people who are rushing towards the bank being like, "I'm under 60 and live in Tokyo. Let me open an account here so I can get a, a fucking ton of money." So each person is getting like $10 million as a result of this, who has this account. And so they're like, yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of people with those accounts. And Nier's like, "For the first time since I became L, I must admit defeat." You did nothing.
It's like, you never left this room. You and your stupid friends did nothing.
So, yeah, and the money actually is coming in to people's accounts. There is, chaos unfolding at the banks with people flooding them to try and get their money. And there's an announcement on the news saying like, yeah, more news details can be found on the bank website, but the bank has announced that customers will only be able to withdraw their savings amount prior to the 24th, up to a total of 100,000 yen per day. So Minoru's like, so I'm not going to be able to access it for about a month. But they did actually, put the money in the bank. So yeah, deal's done. So Ryuk, take this notebook to the President of the United States. Ryuk's like, okay, is that it? Yeah, we're done. Once I've discarded possession of it, I don't want to see you ever again. I'm going to forget about all this. I'm going to live a happy, comfortable life. I don't want anything to do with this dangerous goddamn thing. And bye. And Ryuk, kind of was like, well, you managed to use the Death Note without actually writing in it. So it was a fun time, Minoru. And so he gives it up and approaches Donald Trump in the White House. And Ryuk says, "I got yelled at by the Shinigami King before I came here. He said, how could you let him sell the Death Note?" So there's a new rule that's been added, which is a human who buys or sells the Death Note in the human world will die. The seller will die when they receive the money. The buyer will die when they receive the Death Note. So Trump's like, what? Yeah. So Ryuk's like, yeah, so you paid all that money just to die, basically. But if you refuse to take the notebook, I will treat it as if you didn't buy it. But you won't get any of your money back at this point. So if you take the notebook, you'll die, but it will remain here. So someone else in this country can pick it up and use it. It will still belong to your nation. What's the plan? And Donald Trump's like, I'm not taking it. And Ryuk's like, oh, okay, got it. You value your life over your country. And Trump's like, but I'm going to announce that I've gained the power of cure anyway. I've got it, but I refuse to use it. It will make me look like a saint. And Ryuk's like, very shrewd, Mr. President. And I'm thinking, like, this is definitely the least realistic part of this story.
You're like, he wouldn't have immediately gone onto Twitter and be like, unfair, hashtag dork Ryuk, dork Yuke. Give me unfair rules for the Death Note. This is unfair. I'm the most maligned president in history. I'm treated so unfairly. Like, it's like nonstop tweets. It's just Ryuk standing there like, excuse me.
Are you going to take the notebook or not?
Can you stop tweeting?
No, I think that probably what would happen is Ryuk's like, there's this new rule in the notebook, so if you accept it, you'll die. And Trump would have just been like, fake news. I swear, like, this is the man who stared into the sun during the eclipse. Like, he would not believe this. He would just be like, you're lying. So Ryuk's like, well, what do I do now? Minoru doesn't know about this new rule. So, but he thinks about what Minoru told him the last they talked, which was, you have to keep your word, so don't ever show up around me again for any reason. Or he's like, well, he did say that. So he doesn't show up in front of Minoru to tell him, hey, if you take this money, you'll die. So a month later, this action is having huge effects on Japan. It is being referred to as the Reiwa bubble or the Kira bubble because everyone's got all this money that they can spend now. So the economy is being boosted. But in the bank, Minoru goes to withdraw his money and he falls over dead because he has received the money and completed the payment. Although we actually see that the reason he died was not because of the rule in the notebook. It is because Ryuk wrote his name in his own notebook. And it's a cool little detail that it's the last name that he wrote was just Lights. He has not written in the notebook in the years since then. Nice little extra detail. And he says, it's a shame. His plan was perfect, but it doesn't matter how you do it. Any human who uses the Death Note meets an unfortunate end. And then he just, kind of closes his book up and is like, isn't there anyone else around here who will let me stick around longer so I can get more apples? And that's it. That's the final note of the story. I thought this was really cool, and I really enjoyed reading it. I do really like this idea of using the notebook in a way that does not involve actually using its powers. You just kind of use the idea of the notebook to get something valuable in exchange. But in true fashion for Death Note, the protagonist in this new story is very different from Light. He doesn't want to kill anyone, but he does still do something selfish, which is, I'm going to use this power that just randomly fell on my head in order to get something that I want. And because of that, he still dies, even though he didn't do any murder. It's a very appropriate way of ending this story. So.
Yeah, we have too many series to talk about this week to really go into it, but it is a super fun little short one shot. It's kind of interesting in how pointless it is, but in that way kind of almost reestablishes the Death Note brand into something more akin to like a Twilight Zone, where you're like, hey, we're going to take short stories within this universe and do something like that. And it's like, oh, it's kind of cool. I mean,
I would love to see more stuff like this. Yeah. More stories of different people, getting the Death Note and how they react to this opportunity they're presented with.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
And of course, each of them meeting a tragic end because they decide to use the Death Note. That's the thing about it is that, I do feel worse about Minoru being killed than I did about Kira, who, when Light dies, I'm just like, yeah, fuck you.
Mine was worse because I actually thought that I kind of misread some things. I thought Minoru was actively trying to wipe out the Japanese national debt. So I was like, oh man, that's really rough. And I was like, I guess he's kind of okay with that being a bit of a byproduct of it, but as long as he still gets a shit ton of money.
He does this for selfish reasons still. Or at least it's implied that he does. It's open to interpretation, which I do like. But it definitely seems more like this whole plan was just a means to an end for him to get a comfortable amount of money. And I do like that kind of fits in with the personality we get with him not being one who really applies himself. So he just kind of sees this idea to get $10 million and goes for it. And then he could just be like, yeah, I'm just going to live in comfort from now on. And he doesn't care that, a million other people are going to get all that money too. So. All right, but we should move on to My Hero Academia, number 259, A Quiet Beginning. There is an interesting little thing that happens at the start of this where we just see a little shot of seemingly the Todoroki's mother seemingly joining them in their house. But anyway, we are introduced to Maruta Shiga, which is the real name for Dr. Uruka. Or Dr. Ujiga, not Dr. Uruka, my bad. By the way, Maruta Shiga is apparently not his real name, or it won't be for very long. Chris, did you hear about this?
No.
So, turns out that he happens to share the name Maruta with a set of human experiments. That happened during the Sino-Japanese War. Basically, if you can think of the human experimentation that happened in the Holocaust camps, it's kind of the Japanese equivalent to that. So Horikoshi has issued an apology saying that this was merely a coincidence. It was not a deliberate evocation of those tragic historic events. I don't know if I necessarily buy that because he is a guy who did human experimentation on people with quirks and stuff. It seems like it's a bit of a coincidence if that is the case. Um, but this is going to be changed apparently in future publications. So
Hopefully,
his name's going to be changed.
Hopefully to Robotnik. I mean, like Eggman's an okay name, but Robotnik's like the clearly superior name. So let's do like that. As with many pieces of advice I could give, please be more like Sonic the Hedgehog and pick the superior name for your bald, goggles-wearing, giant mustache supervillain.
So for the time being, I'm just going to keep on calling him Ujiko.
Okay.
So we basically get almost confirmation that doctor that Midoriya saw at the start of the series is probably actually him because he has like founded this hospital, set up orphanages and nursing homes nationwide through partnerships with the hospital. And he is seemingly, he is considered like a whimsical man, but he's respected in many communities, basically. But they have dug up dirt on him, the heroes have, and they know that he is tied to All for One. And they're like, yeah, so this guy has access to this room and only he does. It's accessible via the morgue. And we managed to get this photo of him going inside it. And hey, look, there's a tiny Nomu with fucking sneakers who's seeing him there. And yeah, they're like, oh my gosh, it's an itty bitty Nomu. Baby Nomu. The newest craze that's going to be sweeping all of social media.
Yeah, let's check out
Consume.
hashtag baby nut over here.
Baby Yoda, Baby Shark, Baby Nut, Baby Nomu.
If it helps.
Bye.
So, like, everybody's been shitting on, like, the baby nut thing. Like, what a stupid idea. What a dumb idea to try to, like, get publicity. My first exposure to it was the commercial happened, and moments later, my sister texted me. She's like, I love Baby Nut! I was like, see, this is why you can't believe the internet.
This is why.
Because basic bitches love this shit. I love
Chris, when your sister listens to this episode of Weekly Manga Recap, she's going to be so insulted.
She's going to sit through the 30 minutes of Death Note talk to get to the baby nut discussion. By the way, Death Note's the only anime she even remotely enjoys, but still she won't get to that. Okay,
fair enough. So they're like, all right, we've got to take down the entire Paranormal Liberation Front along with the Nomu and Shiga and Shigaraki, all of them, all at once. So every heroic character in the series is being gathered for this mission, basically, plus a bunch of people who you don't even fucking recognize. So like, all right, we're going to do this. We're going to go storm. The enemy commanders are inside the building. We're going to storm it. We've got to make sure that the warp quirk is not used. But that guy's over at the hospital. So we're going to have someone go over there too. Once their escape route is blocked, they'll have nowhere to run. And we do also get some establishment that not all of the people from UA are in one group. Some of them are like on the headlines, on the front lines rather. Some of them are in the backup group that is to handle evacuations and stuff. So we get a number of group shots. I'm not going to even bother listing some of the ones in different groups because there are so many characters in these group shots. They do bring up the point of like, hey, so why do we know the meeting schedule of what's going on with the Liberation Front? And Endeavor kind of says to Tsukauchi, was it him? Was it what he figured out it was at this hospital? And where is he? And what's he up to? And it's like, yeah, that's classified. And I don't know who you're talking about. And Endeavor's like, yeah, whatever. It's just But so Endeavor's like, all right, I've done what you said, Hawks. So here we go. Talking to himself. We cut to downtown, and there are people who are like, where are all the fucking heroes? But then they're like, oh, wait, there's one. There's Slide and Go over there. But Slide and Go is also like, what's going on? Where are all the other heroes? I don't remember this character's name. It is the third guy who is in the group with Mount Lady and Kamui Woods, the punchy dude. So he comes up from behind Slide and Go and kind of grabs him around the neck and is like, You're the only one out of the loop, you backstabbing liberation nut. And everyone immediately storms in. Uh, all the heroes go into action. There is apparently an insider who at the hospital who calls over to Tsukauchi and Endeavor, and Ujiko is just walking down a corridor by himself, and he's like, "All right, Shigaraki should be ready in just over a month. Things are going well." And oh my God, Endeavor's here! And Endeavor's like, "So you're the devil's minion, huh?" And Ujiko's like, "Ah!" And that's it. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a pretty exciting chapter. We're sort of setting ourselves up for what's going to happen. It's a way to kind of get the heroes, like the kids, involved. It doesn't necessarily mean they're trying to break all their rules about like, hey, let's not involve these kids in super dangerous mission. Like, hey, you're kind of just here to evacuate people because it's almost certainly going to become a giant fight. So it's interesting to see. I think this is going to be a very significant chapter going forward because this looks like the start of something, and this is a good chapter to kind of get me excited for My Hero again, which hasn't happened in a bit.
This definitely seems like it's setting up for that kind of thing that happened when they went to go and rescue Bakugo. And it seemed like they had everything handled. You know, everyone was all tied up. They had knocked out the people who with the most dangerous quirks. And then all of a sudden they were worked away. And the Nomu were attacking the other group and things were going wrong. And you know, All Might ended up losing his powers by the end of it. So I expect that some kind of a turn is going to happen in a chapter or two. And there will be some sort of thing like they knew this was coming, or there is just something that the heroes aren't prepared for, or something like that. So, all right, let's move on to Actage. It's chapter 99, Winner. So was it Hanako? Yeah. She kind of has this like vision, like this. She has this feeling of like when she woke up in her childhood. In the wintry mountains, and she felt like, you know, she saw her imaginary friend, and then it kind of like fades into her seeing Kay as Princess Iron Fan, and she thinks to herself, why does it only reach you? Why never me? So seemingly Kay has managed to capture this essence that Hanako was trying to capture for herself, and she didn't get to actually experience what she wanted to, I guess. There are a bunch of audience reactions, and which are pretty mixed based off of what happened at the end of the play. You know, because there are people who are like, you know, the cast kind of went off script. People are analyzing Ogami's action where he stopped Princess Iron Fan. There are a lot of people who, you know, thought that the play was really good. I do like that there is, you know, a little girl who wants to meet Princess Iron Fan because they were so taken in by Kay's performance. But there are also people like, you know, this is really weird. But then Kay's friends from the, you know, cinema club at school were like, that was really captivating. You know, like I felt the wind blow. It was really powerful. And Hina in particular seems to have been really affected by what happened. And she's like tearing up and she's like, I've got to go find Unagi and talk to her. So then we also cut over to the secondary cast, or the second cast, I guess. And they're like, yeah, we've won because the footage from the first performance is what's going to be streamed online. The producer is like, okay, for Team A, we'll use the second performance for the stream. And Kuriyama's like, no, you know, Yamano was doing everything in order to, you know, evoke all of that for tonight's performance, and everyone rose to the occasion. What are you going to do? You know, that's messed up. And the producer says, there's a lot of money invested in this. We are not thespians. We are in the movie business. So we want this. We want more attention and money and a good reaction. So we're not going to do that. And Kuriyama was like, fuck you, basically. I do like this little conversation, though, a lot, because, you know, Amachi's coming from a place of, yeah, but we're going to do the thing that'll get us better publicity and make us more money, though. Who cares about your dick measuring contest between actors? Kay's co-stars congratulate her on her performance. She apologizes to them for, kind of acting selfishly. Ogami is like, well, I'm the same way. If I'm not satisfied with how my co-stars perform, then I take matters into my own hands. And if you've got a problem, you should talk to my lawyer. And the others beat him up, and they're like, hey, you were lucky, Ogami. And they're like, hey, basically they say like, no one should blame each other. We all agreed in the moments to do what we did. And then there's Hanako, who off in the corner still, and Kay just says, why did you suffer alone all this time? Why didn't you let us support you? I'm like, you forgave her really quickly. A little frustrating. And then finally we cut over to Chiyoko, who is upset because basically the way that this played out has kind of ruined what she wanted to do to defeat Kay, because now it's no longer going to be about them, clashing and stuff like that, because things kind of got corrupted by the end. But Kuroyama goes and fetches her and is carrying her over his shoulder because she, I guess, didn't want to come. And they're going to a movie screening. They're going to go and see the Death Island premiere because Kuroyama says that this is important. It's a rehearsal. It's reviewing your own work. And we have more than enough time and talent to make this performance so great our victory will be indisputable. It's kind of all over the place.
So this is the first time I guess maybe if you're a performer, she just doesn't choose to see movies. But I'm like, wouldn't she have been invited to the premiere or something like that?
Some actors do deliberately not go to premieres of their films. Like for example, like Adam Driver would not do that. So, and also, I think that for her, perfect image thing, I'm sure that she just doesn't give a shit. So
I'm just kind of surprised we didn't do like a premiere chapter.
It does feel like Death Island happened. It does feel like Death Island happened a billion years ago at this point. So yeah, I'm just kind of waiting to see what happens with this second group, because this finish is weird to me. So this conclusion does not feel satisfactory, especially with Kay being like, "Why have you suffered alone, Hanako?" She remembered the whole thing where she said, "I slept with your dad."
I side with the evil producer.
I mean, he makes a good point of like, I don't care about your clean competition between, actors and stuff. I want the best performance possible for us to upload online so that we can fucking have more people go and see this movie. So, yeah. All right. Chris, Eden Zero.
Let's talk Eden Zero. Chapter 80, 60-day commemorative coin. I wonder what that's about.
Oh, my God.
So, wow, so much, really. Homura's had all of her clothes taken away, basically. And, weirdly, this is actually a really debilitating thing for her. She cannot properly fight in this state. She is too embarrassed, despite the fact that she's currently alone. So it's not as though there's like a bunch of prying eyes on her. It's just her and the person who wants to kill her. So, I guess priorities are a bit strange. Homura starts running. She cuts open like a pipe to like fill the area with smoke. Uses that to escape and run into a building.
By the way, she has the most ill-fitting underwear.
Yeah.
It cannot be comfortable,
Well, maybe she doesn't care about comfort, or maybe she doesn't know about different cuts.
It's the only underwear she's ever worn. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's just that
she just flips it out inside out each day and just continues it going.
Let's just assume that Valkyrie just like got her this pair of underwear because she doesn't know the difference between them because she's a robot, and Homura never questioned it. Let's just go with that. Okay.
So Homura runs into a random building. And she's like, oh, God, I have to find garments. And opens the door. And whoa, what would you know? The first place she opens is a dressing room. The heavens smile upon her. And it's full of just kind of like bathing suit sort of stuff. She calls it safe swimming apparel, although that doesn't make 100% sense of what we're about to find out. But there are also masks here, which is great because maybe she's going to have to run out into the city, and this way people won't recognize her. But after she puts everything on, someone's like, hey, we're short-staffed. Get out there. And she's like, wait, what do you mean? And she's pushed down to the stage, and what would you know? It's the place that is like the dance club they were at before. I guess it's not specifically a strip club, but it's a cabaret club, at least of some extent.
I was so worried when this happened. I was like, please don't.
Well, everyone's screaming at her to start dancing because she has such a sexy body. But then Sylph shows up, and everyone's like, oh God, Wynn's here. Oh God, it must be Sylph. So Homora's like, I don't want to fight you with all these people here. Don't do this. And then Sylph just sucks everybody up into her wind ball. And is like, there, now it's not a problem.
Why didn't she just suck up Homura too?
Well, then she couldn't have taken off all of her clothes, Nick.
Good point. What was I thinking?
We wouldn't have been able to get Homura in scantily clad clothing then. Everything's a logical plot point to that. Hero sits down. He has his storyboard for like 3 weeks. He's like, how can I jerk off at the end?
This chapter is the first in a while that feels like it's just Hero trying to be as horny as possible. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, we've had the occasional, like, bath scene that's happened, or, you know, Weiss, for example, Pervenung girls or stuff like that. But I feel like we got through pretty much the entire arc involving like Valkyrie without having any chapter like this disgusting and shameless.
Now it's worth noting we're still in the strip club. So there is still a very real possibility that Homura will have to pole dance her way out.
She'll have to pole dance in order to counteract the effect of the wind.
If she starts pole dancing super fast in the opposite direction to like counter the wind, I'm gonna lose my shit. All right. The one thing is at the very end, Sylph name drops like, "Hey, this is how I kidnapped Rebecca." And they're like, why did you do that? She's like, those are my orders. So we end the scene with Moore being like, why would you be ordered to kidnap Rebecca? Cut over to Rebecca and Daikun, I can't remember his name, Earth Dude. He's like, hey, you want chocolate? Oh, you don't like chocolate? Hey, look at this. It's my coin. I haven't tortured anyone for 60 days. I got a group therapy. And we see like a snapshot of his group therapy scene. And as I mentioned, Gomon, the goat torture guy, is there. So, hey, I guess he's okay in this universe. Well, not okay. He's in a torturing anonymous group, so I guess he's not okay, but he's alive. And he's like, Rebecca rightfully is like, what do you mean you haven't tortured people for 60 days? What'd you do to Labia? And she's like, oh, this isn't torture. This is like light messing, you know? Like, this is a break the rules, basically. So real torture would be, and he's like, you know what? 60 days I think is as much as I can do. I really need to start torturing her right now. Oh, God, anyone will want to pick on her, aren't I right? So Rebecca pulls out her guns, and all of a sudden, plants start growing out of her wrists and sort of latch herself to the wall so she can't, hold anything. And he's like, oh, well, I'm not supposed to lay a hand on number 29, but I can't hold it in anymore. And then we cut away, and Jin is fighting Shiki, and Shiki's like, whew, you're tough. And then we cut away. I'm glad we stopped there for a quick second. And we cut over to Noah at the Shooting Star Guild, and he's like, yes, according to my calculations, it's all going, well, everything's going all according to my calculations so far. So now, what will be your next move, number 29?
Yeah, so this chapter was garbage.
Yeah. I mean, people have brought it up that Sylph has become very much the desert guy from the Spriggan 12, where she can't stop
Your wind is caught. Your wind. I've trapped you in my wind.
This can't stop wind. Smoke can't beat wind. It's very hero fetishy weirdness that Homura has to dress up in a let's just say belly dancing club. Let's be as kind as possible. So she has to put on.
She dresses like Kana would in Fairy Tale, so it's not that bad.
Yeah, she has to put on more risque attire and go to a dance club, and then all that, and then we have the more torture fetish stuff from the Earth dude. So
I mean, amongst everything in this chapter, like it would be different if Homura had like for even a moment had be like, oh no, I must blend in with the crowd and started doing, like vertical splits and stuff. I would be like, ugh. But the fact that she does it and then it teases that, it was like, and then, Sylph just shows up like, oh, thank God. But then after that, you got the stuff with Lobelia, and I'm thinking, oh no. But then nothing really happens. The thing that got me in this chapter that really made me feel creepy was when Rebecca has the like vines or roots, I guess, growing out of her arms and they latch onto the wall, and she's, like pseudo crucified up on the wall because it's suddenly given this big full page shot of her trapped helplessly against the wall. I'm like, oh, stop that. Don't do that. It's weird and creepy. So there was a lot in this chapter, and it just kind of like kept on building and building. And it finally got to that. I'm just like, fuck you, Hero, you fucking big pervert. Stop being horny on main. So yeah, did not like this.
It just doesn't help that the Daikon or whatever his name is doesn't feel particularly
I like torturing people.
Yeah, it's just another like hero one note villain who has one personality trait, which I understand. There are series I greatly enjoy who also have villains with one personality trait, but I guess those are usually funny. So this gimmick just is sort of lame, and I don't know, the bouncing around stuff's just kind of there. It's just one of those chapters where you're like, okay, hero may sometimes be better than when he was kind of at his worst in Fairy Tale, but he's still able to go to that level.
I actually would have preferred to have a Goemon type thing. At least his torture methods were, weird. So
somebody jerks off to it.
Somebody. Yeah. New series in Shonen Jump, Guardian of the Witch. Chapter number 1, Guardian of the Witch. How'd you think of that name? I'm going to try and get through this really quickly. Premise of this series is it's a fantasy series. Huge armies of evils, that's what they're called, evils, these big ass monsters, try to invade a city. It's kind of Attack on Titan style, the big walled castle city. And each of these castle towns are defended by a witch, someone with these huge magical powers. And so the witch defeats them all, and she has a guardian, our protagonist, Fafnir. And the witch is named Manasva. And they have this, very kind of strained relationship because despite the fact that Manasva is like the hero of this city, Fafnir doesn't like her because he just doesn't like witches in general. He thinks that people rely on them too much to stay safe. We also are introduced to Nata, who is Manasva's maid. So this is at the moment where we're at after the first chapter. It seems like these are going to be our 3 primary characters. There's a lot of F's in those names, which is unusual for a Japanese series. But we get to know Fafnir quite a bit. Like we learn about when he first joined the Guardians, the knights essentially of this city, that he was telling them like, well, my dream is that we'll be able to protect this city-state all by ourselves without relying on a witch for help. And so we're going to need to grow and improve as soldiers. And they just laughed at him. And they're like, come on, this isn't how it works in modern warfare. Witches destroy evils, not the Guardians. And Fafnir's like, yeah, I want to change that. And they're like, all right, well, why don't we have a sparring match? I'll bet I can beat you black and blue and show you how foolish you are. And Fafnir kicked his ass. And he's like, what's nonsense and what isn't is something that I'll decide for myself. And Fafnir's like, look, I've seen evils up close. I watched one eat my parents and my little sister. It suddenly appeared within the walls, and no one, not even the army, saw it coming. The witch was late coming. The guards were ineffective. Many people died. Witches are weapons. The more powerful the weapon, the weaker the humans behind it tend to become. I told myself I wouldn't be that way. I'm going to be stronger and better than anyone. I really like this detail about his thoughts on witches and why he doesn't like them. It's because not because he dislikes them as people, it's because he dislikes the effect they have on people and makes them, sit back on their laurels and grow weak. So I like it. However, he ends up being assigned as the guardian to this witch, which is, ironic for him. But in the present, he ends up getting called in by the rector, the head of this town, the priest, the king, I don't know, the leader. And he's like, "You're doing a good job, Fafnir." He's like, "Yeah, I know, but can I go back to my combat unit, please? I don't like this." And he's like, "Well, sure, we can arrange for that, but you have to complete one final mission for me. Kill the witch!" And Fafnir's like, "Oh, really?" and the rector's like, "I have evil lighting now." And he explains, "Hey, here, I've got this magical artifact thing that I'm going to show you." And essentially, they have secret recording equipment within Manafsa's quarters. And when she is being tended to by her maid, she gets her clothing taken off, and there are all of these evil-looking markings going throughout her body, and eyes poking out of her skin and stuff. And the rector says she harbors evils within her. Essentially, the way that witches happen they are not born, they are made. And so, at regular intervals, young girls are summoned from throughout the city-state, injected with the seed of evil, harvested from evils, and many of them go mad immediately. 1 in 10 that survive show signs of physical rejection, and those fail. And the rare handful that live through that stage become witches. But they still have that infection within them, so they will eventually evolve into an evil. Before that happens, they have to be killed. That is the true duty of the guardian of the witch, to kill them before they can turn against us. So Fafnir is sent out on an assassination mission, essentially. He hesitates as he hears Manasa talking with Nata about how basically she hates being a witch, and why she actually kind of likes Fafnir, which is he just flat out said "Hi, I'm your guardian. I hate witches. One day I'm going to make sure that there are no more witches in this state. But yeah, nice to meet you." And Manas is like, he thinks the same way that I do. I hate witches. I hate them more than anything. And, this is a collar that is being used to restrain me, and I'm just a tool that is being used by these people. So I hate this existence. So when I'm around Fafnir, I think to myself, I feel like I'm a normal girl, and it's nice. So Fafnir hesitates at this moment. So the rector is watching everything, and he's like, "This is taking too long. Other assassins, kill her." And of course, Fafnir ends up fighting them off instead of killing Manafsa. And we get to see his style of fighting, which is to use both his sword and his scabbard as a different sort of dual wielding form. And he declares to Manafsa that he has made up his mind on what they're going to do. He says, "I'm going to kill witches. I'm going to stamp out even the very idea of witches, and I resign from being guardian of the witch. From now on, I will be your guardian, the guardian of Manafsa instead." So he fights off the assassins, and they basically say "I don't want anyone to have to grieve because of magic again." Knocks out the guards, and then he's like, "All right, Manafsa, I'm going to become a great guardian, and then I'm going to find a way to turn you back into a human. You'll be a plain old normal, unmagical girl again. So come on, we're going outside." And the three of them, Fafnir, Manafsa, and Nata, head off together, running the fuck away. So I do quite like this premise. It's pretty straightforward. It's a fantasy battle looking thing, but I like Fafnir's character and the way that he looks at things. So it was pretty good opening chapter, I think.
I really like the ending narration, and that's how it began. From there, we took the first steps on our long 18-week journey.
I don't think it's good. I'm not convinced I agree that this is going to last, but I do like it. So let's move on to the other new fantasy series, Mashle. We get introduced to our seemingly female lead in this chapter. It's the same girl that was in the big color spread in the previous one. And I will say right off the bat, I like this chapter of Mashle a lot more than I liked the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm getting on board with this. I hope that good things happen from this. This is, our the kind of thing that you would expect from a series like this, where they set out magical tasks in front of Mash for him to accomplish, and of course he's got no magic to do them with, so he finds a comedic way to solve them instead. So he has to take a written test where the words are writhing around the page, and you're supposed to be able to cast magic on the pages in order to actually be able to read the questions and answer them. So some of the students are panicking and they're like, "Oh no, this isn't going to work." And Mash's it's the wizard from the first chapter that made the proposal to Mash, and also his father are hiding and watching what's going on. And I like how they're just dressed in black bodysuits while carrying some like bushes in their hands, like we are a bush. And they see that him taking this test and like, well, this is never going to work. Why did I think that this would work? But Mash just looks at the page and he's like, would you kindly stop moving? Nothing happens. So he's like, crushes the pen in his hand, kindly stop moving. And the words like, snap straight. So yeah, he scares the words into being legible. And yeah, we get a little montage of him solving problems like, make this rock levitate. Sticks his thumb in the rock and lifts it up. Oh my gosh, he can run on water. All this kind of stuff. So it gets to the next test, and they've got to go through this giant maze while making their way through traps as well, and they have 30 minutes to reach the goal. So Mash sets off, but he is stopped by this young girl, Lemon Irvine. That's an odd one. So she acts all timid and says, like, oh, I thought we could work more efficiently if we worked together. So they start heading off, and she immediately just kind of proves to be a burden. She's like tripping over her own feet. She's getting scared by everything, and Mash has to save her. And a very short montage happens as Mash keeps on having to save her. Eventually, he's like, "This is definitely not more efficient." So he's like, "I've got to hurry in order to reach the end," and he just kind of starts to leave her behind. And Lemon summons magical cuffs to stop him, and she's like, I'm sorry, but I've been instructed to stop you from getting to the goal. I've got a very personal reason for doing it. And Mash is like, what's the reason? I said it was personal. Don't ask. All right. So she's like, it's no use. No human can break those bonds. And Mash breaks the bonds. To which she says, holy cats. Okay. Mash leaves her behind. Lemon starts to set after him, but a Sphinx approaches her. It's a Sphinx.
The Sphinx works out.
It's a Sphinx, but it's like the Sphinx in Egypt, the pyramid. But it's asking her the typical Sphinx's riddle. What has 4 legs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 3 at night. And Lemon's like, she tries to use her magic, but it immediately strikes her wand away and is like, answer my riddle. And Lemon collapses, and she is very, very nervous, and she can't concentrate because she's so scared. So the Sphinx prepares to strike her, and she thinks to herself, this is her punishment for tricking people. And she apologizes to Mash in her mind. But before the blow is struck, Mash appears and says, what are you? Sounds made up if you ask me. Just punches in the head and it goes down.
It is like a great moment. Like, I don't know why, but the joke works so well. Just like, what am I? He's like, what are you? This sounds made up. Boom. He just knocks it out immediately.
I don't know. Poof. So Lemon's like, why'd you come back for me? And Mash says, well, it occurred to me that your personal reason might be like mine, so I felt bad for you. But Lemon says, well, but now neither of us are going to make it in time. When Mash says, well, how do you think I got back here so fast? And we cut over to the instructor who's like, between the traps and the Sphinx and the student I sent to slow him down, there's no way even he can succeed. And there's this rumbling noise, and like, what is that? And the walls are breaking down as Mash just walks through them, leading Lemon ahead. And there is seemingly some sort of head wizard. He looks like Dumbledore. Let's just say it straight up. He's just like, oh, what a curious man. So yeah, I really liked this chapter. This actually got me behind this, comedic muscle wizard premise more than the first one did. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that things keep on going, coming up with that there are more, fun jokes and stuff that happen from this because I'm quite liking it so far.
Yeah, I legitimately really enjoy this series. It's been super fun.
Mission Yozakura family. Mission 22, the Kuruyuri party. Tayo goes undercover as a cute secretary girl. Okay. There is an Elton John politician.
Yeah, I mean that's probably the most accurate way to describe him.
I mean, I don't have a lot to say about this chapter. I liked it more than the previous two chapters, at least. But basically, Tayo's mission is that this politician's apparently been having no assassination and bribery and stuff going on, and he's got these three triplets who are top-ranking spies for political maneuvering, and so they're trying to actually find out what exactly he's been doing. But Tayo ends up joining the political party as the undercover like this. He can't actually find any evidence to tie them to the crimes that they've been committing. But eventually he realizes that their weird dancing that they do all the time is actually them communicating with each other because they're tapping their feet in Morse code, which you would think would be incredibly obvious because it's not as though
there's no rhythm to it.
Yeah.
It's like tap 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 tap
like it should not have taken him days of undercover work to figure this out. It should have taken him minutes. But he figures out what they're planning to do, that they're going to set a bomb off in order to kill some people. Tayo manages to dispose of the bomb, but wouldn't you know it, Kuruyuri actually knew who Tayo was the whole time, and he holds a gun up to Tayo's head and is like, too bad, there was one more bomb. Will you dance in the palm of my hand? And he shoots Tayo in the head and hits the trigger, and boom, the building blows up. What's going to happen? It was okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It's look, I think if this had been the chapter to follow up the one where we first met Ao and Tayo had his big loss,
yes,
this would have been a much more effective follow up because it would have look. I think we're going to all know that we're going to open up the next chapter and Tayo
gonna be fine.
Yeah, like they not only was he fine, he knew that there was a second bomb and got it out or something like that. So it would have been nice to have set up a follow-up chapter out, and it's like, oh no, Tayo failed again. And it's like, oh wait, no, he actually succeeded. And maybe losing that has put more effort into him to do better. So I feel like if it had gone there, it would have been more effective. But as it is here, I'm like, okay, but I'm still just not ready to jump back into the series.
It would have been a more satisfying narrative for there to have been a little scene in this where they were like, after you were embarrassed the family, this is like your last chance for you to really prove yourself. And then it seems like he fails, but then instead he actually succeeds in a really clever way in the next chapter. And then you can go back and they'd be like, all right, you did a good job this time. And then you could have Suo show up and be like, I've got some sort of thing I want you to do. Because he proved himself in a way that got them a lot of attention, for example. Samurai 8, Chapter 36, Hanaichi and Goku. Oh my god. So, Furumio, God, showed up in the previous chapter. In this one, the progress bar is at 100%, download complete, and Dharma's like, that should have taken over 3 weeks. Perhaps Furumyo intervened and made the download happen way faster. Lots of bullshit happens involving Hachimaru's inner space. There are stars in his consciousness that represent different things. So the different stars represent people, and they revolve around your star, Hachimaru. So Hachimaru, there's a little moment where he grabs his dad's star and is like, and so Dharma's like, yes, your memories of your father will never fade. He will remain here as a star.
It's legitimately a sweet moment. I like the initial visual of hey, you're a star, and all these other stars revolve around you, and their light stays inside of you even after the person's gone. So your memories will always stay there. Now touch this.
Enough of that shit.
See your upgrade tree.
Check out the fucking path that you've got to go on for the next half of the chapter. Oh my god, there's so much.
I cannot stress, this is 100% the exact chapter you should never do in a Shonen Battle series. This is so boring. I don't know how Kishimoto, he's a very talented author. I don't know how he would realize he's at the back of a magazine. So sales are not doing well. The series is not popular. He's like, I know how I'll turn this around. An entire chapter devoted to a power scale with a bunch of exposition, no action whatsoever, and a clear realization that our main character is pathetically weak at this point.
Hey, Chris, do you know how to learn how to do something? Well, you see, every technique that you could possibly use has a certain number of statistical thresholds that you have to meet. Jesus Christ, this was so stupid. Like, and it shows up like it's, like a power menu in a video game where it's like, you could use this technique if you've got these mana requirements and bullshit. It's so stupid. There's a technique also that requires infinite stats and everything, which makes no goddamn sense. And then we get to the actual important thing finally that happens in this chapter. So Hachimaru is like, all right, hey, we can use this. So Dharma's like, we should be looking for your box companions here before worrying about techniques. Good thing we looked at your techniques for like 5 pages prior to this. So Hachimaru's like, all right, well, we need a map of the others. And Dharma says, well, this inner space overlaps with the outer space around us. So switch from the status screen to the map screen. And so look, there's beams of light that connect you to the lines where you will find your companions. And Hachimaru realizes, wait a minute, there's one right next to me. What does that mean? So, cut away to...
It's also, I guess, worth noting, there's only 6 targets on his map. So, maybe that's meant to play into it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Or Kishimoto's
I
like,
thought there would be...
Draw that extra line.
I thought there would be more lines. Anyway, Ichigo is talking with the dog guy and Goku, and they're like, you will be the strongest samurai in the galaxy. And Ichigo's like, but I'm a girl. Well, you cannot judge a person by appearances. Your power is special. And you have a powerful gravity, and you have a mind's eye. Also, I have a monkey working for me. Did I mention that? There he is, an ape.
He does not blink, and he will stare at you while you go to the bathroom. I don't believe it's sexual, but I'm not certain.
You knew your planet would be destroyed and that you would be separated from your mother. That is how you can be so calm at this moment. Ichigo's like, I'm not calm.
I'm 9. I'm very upset about my entire world being destroyed.
I would like for you to help us. Wires in your head. What a phenomenal gravity I sense. There, 2 of them already together. I have the coordinates. We're going there. Boom. So Hachimaru wakes up and he's like, oh my God. Summons the projector from his head. Ryu, you're one of the box keys.
You're like, huh, so I am.
Okay. This screams because then of course, since Doghead guy is approaching them, Cathead guy, whatever, is approaching them and goes with Goku over to Hachimaru and company, this means that suddenly 3 of the box keys are in one place. After we spent an entire arc not getting a box key that they thought was a box key. Something tells me this plot point was supposed to take much longer to unfold. Because... Ryu, you're a box key!
Well, here's the thing. I can actually understand this. So, Ryu and... Sansa? I can't remember what his real name is.
Sanda, yes.
Sanda. Both were introduced. We didn't really get the idea that Sanda was supposed to be like a samurai, and then eventually we got that. I mean, it seemed pretty obvious that one of the 2 of them was meant to be a pretty significant character to it. So I was like, all right, there's a pretty good likely at least one of these 2 is a samurai key holder. So if you consider that whole arc being an introduction to them, we did kind of get one in there. We just didn't realize it. And then with the start of this new arc, it's another way to kind of do it. Now, who knows if that's still the way this was all always naturally going to unfold. I mean, the series spent, what, like 7-8 pages of this chapter alone just talking about, like, hey, Hachimaru, your future fucking techniques are going to be super dope. So, I mean, if this is a series that is being told, like, hey, you're going to be canceled soon, it certainly doesn't feel like it. So maybe this was just kind of the pacing it was intended. I mean, it's kind of actually an exciting ending when it's like, boom, hey, this other group has shown up and they're gonna fucking like, they're calling on to you, and hey, 3 of the key holders are in the same place.
Yeah, is it gonna be a fight? Or are they gonna work together? What's gonna happen? So I don't know. I was just blown away when I read this of like, you're a box key, Ryu. It just comes out of nowhere. So whatever. Let's move on. Undead Unluck. What do you negate? So there's a fight in this chapter.
Kind of like the old Pokemon song. What kind of Pokemon are you?
What kind of sexual harassment do you commit? So there's a fight that happens in this chapter. It's pretty cool. Andy uses his regeneration to fire out like his fingers like bullets, which is pretty cool. After figuring out the thing that the big guy negates, which is basically negating movement. Hanako shows up because he can't beat the other guy because he can't figure out how his negation ability works. She tries to rogue him, by like take my glove off, grab you so that you get my touchy danger power. But she unsuccessfully sneak attacks him. So and he's trying to figure out what to do about it. There is a thing where he basically, says like, well, here's what I can do. Since I've killed that guy, she can take a spot in your group and not die. And since I'm, immortal, then I'll just, put up with whatever you want to do with me. I'll be a lab rat or whatever. And then I'll eventually break out and I'll fuck you. But she doesn't want that to happen. So she starts taking her clothes off and she's like, well, let's do this. So that way I can give you enough unluck so that you can die. I'm sorry I can't do more to repay you. And so the guy's like, here's what I'll do. Let's have you kill another one of our members. And if you do that, I'll put in a good word for both of you. So that way I won't have to break, you guys won't have to be split up. And he tells them that there'll be someone showing up in Russia. And so Andy's like, okay, we'll go there and kill him. So I would probably actually like this series if not for the incredibly immature way it handles sex and the topic of sex. It's just like a joke and it's not good. Like, at least whenever Hiro or whoever else utilizes sex in the series, it's something that's like, okay, this is meant to be like titillating, there's something you're supposed to get out of it, as opposed to this, which is just like sex, and that's just kind of the joke, and that's not funny.
So I'm intrigued by this series, and for the most part I kind of dug this chapter to a certain extent. I was kind of annoyed that, look, if you don't like the fact that she's very tsundere for this guy,
she is very.
You're not going to like it. But I do like at this moment, she's like, okay, we killed one of the members of this group. So one of us gets a spot. You're just going to give it to me. So, instead of letting you be a lab rat the rest of your life, I'm going to try to give you that unluck that'll kill you. And then he's kind of angry about it. I was kind of annoyed, though, that he's actively angry, though, where he's actually throws his clothes back on her and he's like, hey, I ain't going to be rotten enough to bang a chick just because she's desperate. Don't ever pull a stunt like that again. And she's like, oh, it won't happen, sir. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the right tone to take with that exchange. It maybe should have been a more kind of, you could present it more nobly where he's like, hey, I don't want it if it's going to be like that. And you should take more care of yourself or something like that, as opposed to The guy
Don't
being
you
like,
don't you do that?
yeah, the guy being like,
That's
hey,
how you're supposed
don't
to
be a
act.
slut. Yeah, like something like that. But that said, Nick, we finished 3 chapters of Undead Unluck.
Yes, we did.
Going to add it to the recap?
I would prefer not to.
I kind of
I
want
just don't
to.
I just don't really have anything to say about it, you know?
I kind of want to. Oh no, Nick activated his internet. Now it's he's ignoring me.
No, I'm just kind of staring.
Okay.
Know?
I mean, if you really don't want to, you don't have to.
You do have that one in the hall if you really want to use it.
Yeah. No.
No, you want to save it for more.
I'm going to be very patient on this.
And you're gonna hold on.
You're going to know when it's coming.
You're going to be patient on this. You're going to wait to get that pizza.
One day I'll get it. Nah, all right. So that's it. We're not going to be talking about Undead Unluck anymore in the magazine.
Right. Now let's talk about Zipman.
Zip zip
versus Evil Spirit Master. This is a short little battle that I really liked. There is a guy who acts nervous at first as Kagami and Koshiro head into the next stage. They apparently have to defeat basically 2 more bosses before they reach the top floor in order to face the final boss in order to save China. They are attacked by this monster thing. Like it's almost like this stitched together doll of this huge demon. And at various points in its body, you see the heads of Kagami's classmates sticking out. Basically, this is the power of the person that they're actually fighting against, who is this kind of nervous-looking small person who's like, hey, I'm the evil spirit master, and these are my evil spirits. Well, none of us are that strong, including me. So I put an exploding collar on them. If you hit these guys too hard, it'll explode and probably kill them. So don't attack them. And meanwhile, he's sending these, monster suit things after them to attack Zipman, knocking him around. So he's like, see, there's 2 choices. You can, kill them and keep going, or you can give up on risking the princess. There's only 2 choices. And there's suddenly this big full-page spread of him turning to this, ectoplasmy monster looming over Zipman and being like, can you choose between the 2? So Kagami's like, oh, I get it. And the guy's like, and the evil spirit master's like, you can't possibly be able to choose. So what are you going to do? You'll just have to play with my evil spirits until you die or give up. And Kagami's like, it's just as you said. He throws this huge lance-looking thing, which almost looks like it goes through the spirit master's head at first, but it turns out it was just next to him. And so he's like, choose between the 2. There's no way I'm doing that. And he's got all these spikes set up to throw as weapons. So Evil Spirit Master starts running away. And he's like, this isn't what I was told about how he would act. He's going to kill me. And Koshiro starts communicating to Kagami. He's like, he's running at 37 miles per hour, wind direction 72 degrees, vector calculations complete. Fire! And they throw one final lance. And it goes, and it seems to, again, impale the evil spirit master. But it turns out it actually went straight through the zipper on the front of the costume and ripped it right out. Perfect hit. And Kagami just says, that zipper's not even worth taking. And they've won the second battle and are moving on. Flamehead guy is watching this on a video monitor. There is a kind of humanoid dog-looking one next to him who says, I found his weakness. It was a cool little chapter.
Every week, I feel as though there's a secret chapter of Zipman that I was supposed to have read. Because when was taking zippers established to be a concept? I know they use they unzip people to beat them, but they specifically refer to it as I don't even want to take your zipper. I'm like, so are zippers power sources?
Well, the first zipper that got ripped off in the first chapter showed up in the next chapter, and they attached it onto the arm And that was how they summoned the huge rocket fist thing in the fight against the magical girl zipper.
It's just such a weird concept to not have more people like if that's supposed to be a basis of the series. Maybe just because I'm not paying enough attention. But like I really read this chapter, I was like, do they take zippers? Is that a thing they really do? Because it doesn't like it's not as though like after they beat the last chick, they were like, I'm gonna take your 3D printer zipper because that seems really useful.
Maybe that's what they used in this one because they're throwing the lances and stuff.
Well, didn't they
Maybe
just
that's
grab it? Isn't like a giant coliseum, so there's a bunch of stuff like around?
maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know. It is a little hard to follow at points, but yeah.
Like I guess this series has a lot of the stylings of a Saturday morning cartoon,
Yes.
but I don't know. Maybe I'm just missing the part where it feels like it should be made more obvious. Like maybe there needs to be a scene where it's like activate fucking 3D printer power later.
You need to have the
zipper or
transformation
something
sequence in every chapter, yeah.
or just something to establish that that's what they're doing. Because I've missed that that's what they do is they gather zippers to use them afterwards.
Mm. Well, Chris, maybe they'll learn someday.
One day.
Mm.
But we never learned today, though, Nick.
Hmm.
Question 145. The ephemeral mermaid sprinkles into the promised pizza bet part 4. So the little vacation trip is over, and Yuega is kind of just comatose in his house right now. He's kind of has a very vacant expression. So he has not found his answer quite yet. His mom's like, hey, you know, you've been kind of spacing out since you got your exam results. And he's like, oh, well. And his sister's like, oh, yeah, tomorrow's your graduation. And then next week I graduate junior high. So, you know, it's kind of sad. I get it. We'll make you a bunch of good food and everything like that. And he's like, okay. He decides to go out for a walk. His mom's like, hey, bring an umbrella. And he's walking around, and he sees his two friends, the ones who I'm never going to remember.
No.
I know their names at some point, but anyway, they're like, hey, you kind of seem like you're in trouble or something like that. And the one guy's like, oh, did someone declare their love for you or something? And he immediately like blushes and turns away. And the guy who said it is just like, ha ha ha, like that would happen. And the other guy's like, holy shit, was it Takamoto? He doesn't say it out loud.
It's been years.
He definitely is like, hey. And his friend's like, hey, you know what? If something's bothering you, man, you know, we're here for you. And, you know, the two of them are like kind of stunned. He's like, what, did I say something weird? Isn't it normal that when a friend's got a problem, you kind of stand up for that? And Yuiga's like, you know what? Or I guess it's actually the other friend's like, you know what? On rare occasions, you're a pretty nice guy. He's like, fuck you. I'm always a nice guy.
I do love that.
And Yuiga's like,
I'm always nice.
I mean, his only character-defining chapter was that he goes to restaurants to Instagram food, basically. So, I mean, it's not as though we have enough character details to know if he's lying or not. Yuiga is basically says like, hey guys, thanks, but this is something I kind of have to work on my own, so I'm going to come up with my own answer. Keeps walking, notices the rain's coming down. He's waiting at the bus stop, and he's like, oh, I'm getting kind of deja vu. And he thinks back to, you know, he goes on his bus trip, goes to his father's grave, and is starting to explain like, oh, hey, you know, I got into this, you know, I got into university, and she's going to be starting high school with an athletic sponsorship, and then the twins are doing well, mom's doing good, and basically like saying like, hey, catching up. And then he mentions like, hey, Dad, so a girl I know told me she had feelings for me, and I've been trying to rack my brain. I just can't seem to sort through my feelings on it. So I don't really want to think about it, but I guess I have to re-examine what's happened and who I was back then. So we go into a flashback. It's Yuiga when he's in middle school, and we can hear a bunch of people bullying him, basically saying like, oh, it's that nerdy boy, he studies all the time, but he's still really bad at getting scores. Yeah, what's even the point of doing it? And we see Yuiga with these big heavy eyes, and it's very recently after his father has passed, and we see Yuiga with all this kind of weight on him. He comes home, he sees his mom crying with the two very young twins kind of on her, and then he gets welcomed home by Mizuki, And she's kind of sad too. And Yuiga's like, did you stay home from school again? She's like, yeah, because if I go to school, I feel like the kids are going to pick on me about dad again. And I hate school. I don't like anything about it. So I wanted to stay with you. And Yuiga puts on a smile and he's like, I have to be strong. I have to support my family. I'm the oldest. Everything kind of falls on me. We cut over to this flashback, Yuiga standing in the rain with Aruka that we saw like a hint of earlier. And he's thinking like, I failed another quiz. I've got to at least do well in school. And he notices that Aruka's music's really loud. And she doesn't really seem to notice it. And she's like, oh my God, was I singing out loud? I'm so sorry. How embarrassing. And he's like, don't worry about it. Because he's in a pretty low spot. Mm-hmm. He thinks, he's like, oh, right. This girl's in my class. We talked a little bit in swim class the other day. She's a swimming prodigy. She's won a bunch of things. You know what? She just lives in a different world than me. They get on the bus. They're the only two people on there. Yuiga's just beating himself up over the fact that he's just a bad student. Everything he's trying to do means nothing, and he kind of just fades away. He's like, I don't even care anymore. What's the point? No matter how hard I try, it's just not going to work. I wonder what will happen if I just ride to the last stop. And he does. He rides all the way to the last stop, which is the beach, and he gets off. And then Aruka gets off after him, and he's like, why did you come all the way out here? And she's like, well, we haven't really talked much, but you look like you were going to faint, so I was worried. So they run out to the beach. Aruka's kind of like being chipper, full of energy. Yuiga's obviously the opposite. There's a bit of a weird joke. And then Aruka's like, hey, what's it going to take to make you laugh? And Yuiga just has a stunned expression. She says, you always look so serious. What if you tried letting yourself smile more? And he says, well, I can't just do that. Thinking to Mizuki, she needs somebody else. And she's sad. And he's like, well, maybe if my little sister could be happy at school. And Aruka's like, oh, got it. Let's go. He's like, go where? And she's like, duh. We're going to make you smile, obviously. And that's a chapter.
So it seems we're going to get more insight into why Mizuki looks up to Aruka so much from this. And yeah, I mean, it seems like it's been actually a really long time coming, actually establishing that, oh yeah, Aruka was around while Yuiga was like depressed when his dad died. And she played a role in that. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happened here.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, absolutely. I come on. I mean, like legitimately, she has to win, right?
you're on this now. It's like, come on.
She's the best girl. It's not even close.
I actually had kind of a different reaction in terms of that aspect to this, which was, even if she's not the romantic interest, I do see like the direction this is going in terms of just establishing how important Aruka is to Yuiga in terms of the bond between them and their friendship. So I was kind of actually really assured from this of like, okay, even if it's not like, okay, Yuiga loves her back and they're going to have babies together, it's like they do care a lot about each other. And I'm glad for that. So let's go to Dr. Stone.
Time to get stoned.
Z equals 137, last man standing. The drone tangles up the Medusa, but of course it comes down to what they were talking about at the start of this, before the plan went into action. They've got to have a freaking tug-of-war now, and Ibarra may be one person, and they may have both Ryusu and Senku, but Ibarra is fucking jacked, and he's also unnaturally large for a human being. So they're not doing so well. So the plan that Senku has is, instead of actually winning the tug-of-war battle, which they can't really do, it's for them to let go at the last moment because, oh yeah, Ibarra triggered the Medusa to go off for 5 meters in 5 seconds. So they just kind of have it snap back towards him at that exact moment. But Ibarra has seen through this plan because it's like, I know exactly what is going to happen here because, I'll allow this calculated farce to play out, but this old man is always cautious. I know exactly what they're going to do. And sure enough, they let the drone and the Medusa snap back, and Seku's like, I'm never off, not when it comes to counting. And the Medusa clicks, And Ibarra's hat smashes into the drone and knocks it away from him, and the Medusa goes off in between them instead. Because he's like, I knew what you were gonna do. I know how this Medusa works. I've practiced with it. I can eyeball its range very well, and I have practiced against having it used against me too. But unexpectedly, Ryusui's statue comes flying in towards him and knocks him into the ground, or almost knocks him into the ground, but he manages to just get out of the way. And Ibarra's like, "You fool! You can't overcome the Medusa with brute force. And now the Medusa's come back to me. This was always inevitable. Goodbye. This time for real. The last man standing is this old man." And he holds up the Medusa, and it's got the earring attached to it. And Senku says into the phone, 5 meters, 1 second. And Senku, after he says, "You were totally right. Guys who think they're clever are the easiest to trap," the Medusa goes off in Ibarra's hand. It petrifies him. So, seemingly, the remote voice thing was not the problem before. It was just the voice has to be like literally right next to the Medusa to trigger it. So you can't just shout at it, basically. But Ibarra wasn't petrified. Senku has won the battle of wits, and the battle between the Kingdom of Science and the Kingdom of Petrification is seemingly completely over at this point. Senku is the last man standing. He celebrates briefly. We get the little thing that pops up that says petrification device acquired. But he looks around, and of course, the entire island is empty, save for Senku and a bunch of statues. And he flashes back to, being completely alone at the very start of the series. He thinks, I'm alone again. But Ruri's voice comes over the cell phone, asking if he is faring well. Apparently, the cell phones get really damn good reception. So we get, a short scene of Ruri along with Tsukasa's sister and the reporter girl and the other people who remained behind at Ishigami Village talking to him. And Senku says, "This time, I'm not alone." So that's a cool little sentiment there. Neat little chapter. I liked the back and forth and the constant, one-upsmanship in the game of wits that happened between Senku and Ibarra over the last few chapters. It was a cool way to end this whole arc. So,
it's a great chapter. This is just a fucking phenomenal chapter. It's such a great ending of fucking Ryusui leaping into the blast so he can hook that earring onto it as like a one last ditch move. And it's such a great moment when you see Ibarra celebrate. He holds up the ring and you see the earring, and it's great because they don't immediately try, like, you still get like half a page to really digest it, and immediately like 5 meters 1 second you're like, finally. It's such a satisfied moment, man. It's great. This is what Nagaki does better than maybe any other writer in Jump.
And of course, there's that immediate turnabout where, Ibarra's like, "Oh, you thought you was going to, snap back to me and petrify me, but the ones who think they're so clever are the easiest ones to trick." And then Senku immediately turns around on him. It's really satisfying.
I like the ending. It was very sweet.
Yeah. Chainsaw Man.
Brum, 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 brum.
Chapter 56, a curse and a first. It's almost a rhyme. There's more wackiness between Denji and Power and the douchebag bodyguard guy. Because, Power's refusing to eat the vegetables on her hamburger when they're at a burger place. And he's like, "A well-balanced diet is essential. Eat it." And I like how this time Aki is like, "Yeah, you picked them out a lot, home. You should eat them." and literally everyone around there is just like, "Eat your fucking vegetables. It's good for you." And eventually Denji's just like, "Try them." They end up leaving. The master student assassin actually show up while they're in the middle of their meal, and the woman tells her student that she managed to stab him with a curse devil. And she says, "Stab someone with this 4 times, you take their life, but you pay a great price. I've already stabbed the target 3 times undetected, so I will entrust the 4th and final time to you, Toka. This is my test for you, and if you pass, I will introduce you to the devils I have contracts with." But she starts to have a burger, and the hamburger falls out of her hands, and she says, "Oh, I guess I lost sensation in several of my fingers in order to make the contract there. So I wonder if I can still taste it." No, it's a good burger. Well, if you're at a McDonald's, then maybe you don't have your sense of taste.
Yeah.
Sorry. But these are definitely a much more interesting group of characters than the ones who seem like they're going to be the focus first. The ones who have disguised themselves as agents. But anyway, we also see the what's his title? The Violence Demon.
Violence Devil, rather. Yeah.
And Kobeni are I guess have just finished up killing an eyeball devil thing, and they're like, "Oh, okay. What do we report this as?" And he's like, grapes. Anyway, let's take a break after we hand over this devil." And they're like, "Yeah, yay! Oh, ice cream. Oh, thank you for always treating me to ice cream." And the Violence Devil's like, "Oh yeah, eat up. I can't eat because of this mask, so I want to enjoy it vicariously through you." "Oh, okay." And she enjoys the ice cream. And they talk a bit, and she talks about, the last time she got to enjoy soft serve ice cream. And she's like, for a violence theme, you don't seem very violent. And he's like, "I know." They tell me I still have a lot of my human brain left, which is rare for fiends. I remember the school I went to when I was a human. I remember my favorite place for cheap eats, stuff like that. But I don't remember how I died. All I remember is that Makima saved me. But yeah, I'm not a fan of violence. I'm all about love and peace. And either I managed to hold up my hand in a really weird way, or I've managed to turn one of my hands backwards for this one panel. It's kind of hard to tell. The word bubble's in the way. Anyway, one of the brothers comes running up to them saying, "Tendo and Subaru were taken out on our way here. You've got to tell the headquarters." And they react in shock at first, and they're like, "Who the hell are you?" And he's like, "My buddy and master were killed. Find a phone." So they run off to find a phone, and he's just like, "Idiots! They shouldn't have believed me before I flashed a public safety badge." Then we cut over to Denji and Power again. Denji realizes, "Wait a minute, these guards aren't to protect me. They're using me as bait." And Aki's like, "Yep." But he points out, like, you guys are harder to kill than us humans, so don't hold it against me. Remember, this is so we can go to Enoshima as soon as possible. And Denji's like, "All right, then I can let it go." And Power's like, "No, wait, this is a bad deal for me. I hate this." And so Aki's like, "All right, Power, then what do you want?" And Power's like, "I want to suck out all of a human's blood until they die." And Aki's like, "Okay, Denji, when this business is done, let her suck out your blood until you die." And then he's like, "No!" And Power's like, "I get to suck Denji's blood? Yes!" That's the end of the chapter.
It's a very fun little chapter.
There's a lot of sweet little moments in this, unexpectedly. I do like the establishment that there seems to be a friendship forming between the Violence Devil and Kobeni, because the more that characters care about each other, the more you care about them in general. So,
all right, let's real quick run through Seven Deadly Sins, chapter 340. I miss you. So, the Seven Deadly Sins were teleported back to, I believe, Leonis, and basically they're just like, "It's really crazy what happened." Melodius seems confident, like, "Hey, I bet she still smiles as we speak." We cut over to Merlin, and she's hanging out with Arthur, and we see his sword, which is perpetually having, like, bats and angels fly into it. She's like, is this its original form, or is there signs that it still has room to change? If that's the case, Arthur, maybe his magic's not fully formed in that case. This is going to be very interesting. She has a real smile on her face, and Arthur's like, "It's been a while since I've seen that. That's the Merlin I always know." They go on to explain, like, "Hey, you're in this castle. It's kind of bare, but you know what? It just shows your power." There's a whole bunch here to really talk about, but we don't have a ton of time. The one thing to note is that Arthur seems very confident he can use his power for good. And as he says that, the bats that were flying into his sword disappear, leaving just the angel wings. So is that a good omen or an evil omen? The Seven Deadly Sins are pretty dejected. Like they're upset. Like, "Hey, this really feels final." Ban is like, "Everything has to end. I mean, we already lost Escanor." So
yeah. Could this be the true end of the Seven Deadly Sins?
Yeah. And it's like, "No, we have to get involved with this. Chaos isn't gone yet. Arthur doesn't have full control over it, and if he loses control, we've seen what would happen. So we have to understand what's going on." And Diane just thinks to herself, or says out loud, kind of like, why did Merlin stay quiet about chaos all this time? Why did she only tell us about it now? And Lloyd's like, good question. We're just going to have to ask her and find out. And Gothar's like, do you not know the answer to that? And that's where we kind of cut away from there. The Kate Sith is back. It's a larger cat now. It says he's going to eat them. And Merlin's like, I'm going to fight you. And that's where we end the chapter.
It's a really cool shot when it shows up, because it actually is like on top of the tower that they're staying in, and he's leaning down in order to look inside of it. So you get this big wide shot of how big he is. So
all right, let's move on.
There's no Promised Neverland this week. So
no
Black
Promised
Clover,
Neverland. Yeah, Black Clover, page 238. Xeno's power. Xeno
is really powerful.
Very powerful. Fuck, what's his? God damn. Kind of seems to have a memory of the fact that he's seen this guy before. And he's like, oh, you're. And Xeno's like, oh, they sucked. Like the other two guys I brought are dead already. Well, I guess that's what's happened when you bring anyone that's under 50%. I won't do that again. Sylph is like, hey, we got to get out of here. Get out of here now. And then he just starts immediately launching, I believe, like giant bone missiles. It's kind of tough to tell because there's not much separating the speed lines from the actual projectiles, but a bunch of bones are flying everywhere. They note like, hey, there's not really space to evade. What are we going to do? And after the attack's done, Yuno's okay, but Klaus and Compass Girl, they're dead. They've been impaled every which way. Yuno gets really upset. He screams, you bastard! Runs at him with his sword, tries to cut it. And he's like, why isn't it cutting it? And he realizes that Xeno is literally just regenerating faster than the erosion of the sword could take place. And Xeno's like, stage 0. If that's the case, then I'll show you a little of my devil's power. 55%. And we see this giant visage of a devil. And he says, you aren't weak. I'm simply far stronger. And we see Marcus, I think was his name. The Spade Kingdom guy who revealed Yuno's past shows up and comes upon a site. The Golden Dawn headquarters has been destroyed, and Yuno is atop a rock with a blade through his chest as Sylph is crying into him. So maybe Yuno is dead.
It's a cool little touch that Sylph is there, crying over him like that. This is an all right chapter. I do really like the visual of, the devil, because he's in, a different world that Xeno is attached to, looming over them and, completely eclipsing their size with its own. And just, how much Xeno outclasses Xeno at this point in time. It's been probably the most effective use of Yuno these past few chapters in Black Clover thus far, because Jesus Christ, he was boring up to this point.
Yeah. So. I mean, it's kind of a bummer if Klaus is dead, and the presumably Compass Girl. Maybe they'll run into somebody who has resurrection magic again, basically.
Or maybe they're just not dead, Yeah,
I mean, they could have survived. It doesn't seem like they could have from the visual there, but it does seem a shame to have killed off, I guess, like the only other person than Mimosa and Vengeance that we actually know in the guild. But it also sets up stakes. I mean, you do kind of want to see this guy die because I kind of like Klaus,
Well, that's it. That was Black Clover. One Piece, chapter 970, Odin versus Kaido. It's Odin versus Kaido. Odin and the Yakuza 9 all head off to try and stop Kaido, who is looming over them all in his dragon form. And Kaido actually knew that they were coming, so he's prepared, in his full dragon form and stuff. He's got his army behind him as well. And Odin brings this up like, wasn't actually expecting you to be prepared. And Kaido's just like, perhaps I have a spy in your castle. I have just had my mansion built. I'd rather not have it be blown up in our fight, so I came out to meet you instead. And of course, they established like, everything that Kaido had said before was a lie. Everything that Odin was told about the condition that they were in. And Kaido actually freely admits, we were at a disadvantage then. After your return, if you had joined forces with Yogoro, we would have had to deal with all the samurai and yakuza of Wano together. We had fewer numbers then. It would have been a difficult battle, especially if you lived up to your fearsome reputation as a madman who would not blink at any sacrifice. Instead, you chose a method that would not hurt anyone, and Yuge and Roger were like that too. Mighty pirates, but soft in their way. And you are one of them, the fool who chose to dance. You have none of the old Kozuki dignity. So Odin draws a sword and he says, I stand by my decision that day. Let us speak of the future now. And they clash and a bunch of fighting. Of course, the Akasai and Nine are completely outnumbered, but they are far stronger than most of Kaido's forces. There's a nice touch in the middle of this where Yasuie is hanging out in Odin's house to make sure that his family remains protected. But he warns Itoki, we must be prepared for the worst, because if Odin loses the battle, this country is lost. There are, little things that happen, like Shinobu joins the battle, and they flash back to like, oh, hey, I remember that Shinobu when she was a little kid. She says, like, I can no longer stay in the palace. So, okay. They all venture together into battle. There are little shots of like silhouettes of like, Queen joining in the battle and stuff. But the battle goes on and on as Odin's forces are stronger than Kaido was expecting. Kaido gets cut in the neck, basically, by Odin's technique. The huge X mark appears in its chest kind of area, which shocks everyone because Kaido was thought invincible. And Odin shouts out, never come back to Wano, as he comes after Kaido. But all of a sudden, one of Kaido's forces has Momonosuke in his grip and is holding a knife at his neck. And in this moment where Odin is distracted by this, Kaido comes up from behind in his human form and clubs him over the back of the head. And of course, Momonosuke transforms back into the old hag with the clone fruit. It was a trick to deceive Odin. All of these samurai are captured and chained up after being defeated. They are imprisoned. Someone seemingly gets away. I guess it's Shinobu? It seems like she got away because we don't see her in the prison, and we see someone who looks like her walking through the street. She refused, I guess, specifically saying that she was not a vassal of Odin's. Okay. He did it in his typical Odin fashion too. Like, who the fuck are you? Be gone! Yeah. So saved her goddamn life. There's a sad little scene where fucking Momonosuke says to Toki, like, when is father coming home? And Hiyori's like, I folded a paper balloon for him. Won't that be nice when he gets back? And an announcement is declared saying that in the public square, 3 days from now, the 10 wicked samurai are sentenced to be boiled to death. Done.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty interesting stuff. Sorry, I got distracted. I was trying to see if the kid the guy who tried to hold Momonosuke hostage was Jack.
Don't recognize him. Yeah,
I don't think he's supposed to be anyone. I thought it might have been Jack, but Jack I think has sharp teeth, so it doesn't seem to be him. But yeah, I mean, this is a pretty effective chapter. It's a nice scene too. Like, they tricked him with his kid using the clone fruit again. Like it's very like underhanded way to be like it's very satisfying.
Even with the overwhelming numbers, Odin could have beaten Kaido if not for the fact that he was tricked one last time. So all right, World Trigger chapter 191, Yuba Squad Part 4. People react to stuff that happened at the end of the previous one with Obishima taking out Kai. They kind of analyze. The commenters kind of break down what happened and what could have happened and the decision that went into why Obishima did that. We get Yuba chasing down what's his face. I don't know his name. tries to go after him, but he nearly gets taken out by Suji, who comes in and sneak attacks him, but Yuba's able to knock him away. Now it's 2-on-1 on that front. They bring up the fact that despite the fact that it's 2-on-1, that Yuba could very well still take both out because they're attackers, and Yuba is known as the attacker killer. Because basically he just always stays outside of the range of the Kogetsu whirlwind and just guns them down. And they also bring up that, Ikoma's whirlwind is specifically meant to counter that technique because, he can launch it a further distance. So that's a cool detail. But, of course, Ninomiya can fucking shoot everything and the building next to Yuba blows up as well. So it's kind of 3-on-1 at this point. Then we've got the fight between Yuma and Obishima. And this is fucking cool. So they're clashing relatively evenly, but Obishima ends up getting led into Mikomo's spider web. And so they've got to fight within that. Obishima tries to use some bullets fanning out in order to catch Yuma on the defensive, force him to use a shield to defend himself, and hopefully drive him back and get the advantage that way. But Yuma throws a scorpion, which whirls through the air like it's a shuriken, and Obishima manages to deflect it, but then Yuma summons a horde of grasshoppers within the spider web and just summons a globe of ricocheting panels that constantly reflect the shuriken scorpion over and over and over again, until eventually there's an opening and Yuma comes in, lands behind Obishima, and stabs her through the back with his sword. And Yuma promises, "You'll get stronger, Obishima. I guarantee it." And Obishima is forced to bail out. So that leaves Yuba squad with just Yuba himself. Ninomiya squad is at full strength. Tamakoma 2 is down to 3 members, and they need 2 more points in order to win this thing. Or not win this thing, but in order to proceed to getting selected. So it's coming down to the wire here, and also kind of approaching the worst case scenario for Tamakoma 2 of having to deal with all of Ninomiya's squad at once. So
yeah, it's a rough spot. It's super exciting. Obishima looks super cool in this, so it's nice to see that. I mean, it's super inventive to just Yuega summoning, or Yuma rather, summoning a shit ton of grasshoppers and throwing a shuriken into it so they can bounce off each other. It's such a a visually cool thing. It's like, fuck, man, I love this series. I also love them just spending time to be like, yes, Yuba stands outside of of Kogetsu's range, and Akoma specifically created a technique to counter. It just makes the world feel actually more inventive and lively, where it's like, oh yeah, these are people who are trained against each other all the time. They're coming up with techniques to beat each other. It's very satisfying.
So another cool chapter. There were actually quite a few good chapters this week. So what's going to be the best one, as declared by Weekly Manga Recap, though? Favorite series and MVP, Chris.
Not anyone else. Chapter of the week is Dr. Stone. That to me was like a slam dunk. Like, wow, this was the coolest fucking chapter this week. Super satisfying. Loved it.
I'm going to agree with you. There were, like I said, a lot of good chapters this week. There was the one shot from Death Note. There was, of course, the World Trigger chapter. I like the direction that We Never Learn is taking. So many good ones. But in terms of the reaction that I got when I first read it, Dr. Stone wins hands down, because that moment where, like you mentioned, the Medusa gets held up and you see the earring hooked onto it, and then you get the explanation of what Ryuzu was trying to do was not to overpower it. It was just to hook the earring onto it. And then they finally win. It's really satisfying. So.
My MVP of the week is going to be Armonia Justin, because that is a cool skeleton dude made of diamonds in his chair. And that is pretty fucking awesome.
I am going...
I love the fucking... I've already seen Ninja's like, what the fuck do I even write for that?
Armonia Justin from the Death Note one-shot.
Which we're not 100% positive that's his name. Just put school skeleton chair guy.
Skeleton chair guy. Also, I love the fact that his scene is essentially Ryu going, "Armonia Justin, what are you doing here? I've got a message. What is the message? I don't know. Bye.
He left his mark, though. God damn it.
Mine is going to be Fafnir from Guardian of the Witch. I feel like his character really makes that opening chapter for me in terms of his standpoints, his nobility, his practicality, and his bluntness. So that was 90% of the reason I ended up liking that chapter and thinking that it had potential. So
yeah, I super agree with that. The audience, by the way, picked Dr. Stone as their chapter of the week and Uruka as their MVP, which I can absolutely agree with as well.
Good friend Uruka deserves recognition. Yeah,
had a giant skeleton made of jewels not ridden in his chair, it probably would have been Uruka on my end as well. But you can't win them all.
I think it definitely shows how strong the Dr. Stone chapter was this week, that it stands out not only amongst a bunch of good chapters in general, but also that World Trigger came out this week and Dr. Stone still won.
If there had been 2 chapters, it would have been World Trigger.
Yeah. All right, guys, that is going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap. Thank you for joining us. We record the show live on twitch.tv/RoloT sometime between 7:30 and 8 Eastern time on Wednesdays. You can also check out our past episodes, weeklymangarecap.podbean.com. Be sure to join the Discord server so that you can take part in all the conversations related to manga, the series that we're talking about, recommendations, and also just other miscellaneous geeky stuff. You can also use that to find the spreadsheet that Ninja X3i maintains, where it keeps track of the recommendations we've been through, audience votes, supplementary awards, all that good stuff. And you can also take part in more of those on the Twitter account, WMRVotes. Special thanks go out to everyone who contributes to our Patreon. We appreciate the support. We have been churning out some bonus episodes for you guys to enjoy. Showdown got put up recently. Should have a special review coming out soon, I believe. And so go check that out. We are starting to put out a bunch of stuff on there. Special thanks as well go to Infamous Planet for creating the frame for the visual version of the stream. To our title card artist, Steve Mann. I'm losing track of it because I'm doing this all by memory. Winslow Cheddar and Milo Jack Stillitz for creating the opening sequence for Weekly Manga Recap. And that is going to do it.
All right, that's going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap this week. I hope everybody enjoyed the episode. Go buy some Baby Nut merchandise, everybody.
Don't do that. That's
okay. Spend your money more wisely then. I can't think of a better thing to do with your money than spending on Baby Nut merchandise right now.
Okay.
Do you have an example?
Write to your congressman and tell him
Baby Nut
or her
that I would like to elect Baby Nut.
that if they do not give a presidential medal to Baby Nut,
God damn it, he's fucking perfect.
All right, that's it.